final season of Broadchurch. Here with us, I'm very pleased to say, is a panel of experts from the creators to one of the stars and also one of the new stars and some key advisors on this final season. So I'll introduce them. I'll start. We've got the exec producer, Jane Featherstone, the creator and exec producer, Chris Chibnall. Also joining us, a man who needs no introduction, I'm sure, David Tennant, a new star of Broadchurch, Julie Hesmond-Hodge, and alongside her, some key individuals. We have got Michelle Chalice, who is from the Dorset Sexual Assault Referral Centre, and Gloria de Camilla and Tracy Parsons, both joining us from the Dorset Rape Crisis. So a big round of applause. Yes, if I can start with you. So it was around 6 years ago, you were walking along a beach in Dorset and you envisaged this series, this drama that became Broadchurch. At that point, I think you knew it was going to be a trilogy. So how was it returning to know you were making this the final season?
Well, very emotional. I was just glad certain people said yes. That was a big part of it. But it felt like it felt like there was one more story to tell within this world. It felt like, I think the big thing for me was the world has changed so much since that first walk, but since the first series went out, and there are other preoccupations in the country now, and generally and culturally, so it felt like Broadchurch was a great world to explore those in, and that's where we started from, where I started from, and from that point of thinking of wanting to explore this issue and this story, we went out and started to reach out to people and meet people like these guys, and that's it. It came from there, really.
I must just say, actually, I must just point out, one of the stars, David, said yes to reappearing in Broadchurch. So did Olivia Colman, as you know, you've just seen her in the episode. She was due to be here this afternoon. Unfortunately, the scene that she was filming in her new film, Murder on the Orient Express, has overrun. She's devastated that she can't join us, but she has sent her apologies, so I'm sure you appreciate it. She's an extremely busy actor at the moment. Jane, from your point of view, you've really had the support of the community in making these 3 seasons. Were they sad to learn that this was definitely the final season, and did they embrace this final storyline?
Probably mixed feelings, I expect, but the community is 3 places really. So it's Clevedon and Bristol, which is the High Street and several of those locations, and then West Bay and Bridport, which are obviously very close together. And I think they've loved having us there to a degree. We do disrupt their summers every year, but we also bring quite a lot of fun to the area, I think, and some work, and the town of Bridport has had an incredible time with the series, hasn't it? There are walking tours now, and there are lots of signs made up with Broadchurch. So I think they'll be sad to see us go, I hope. They've been amazing. We really want to thank them. All those 3 communities have been really incredible.
When Chris said to you at some point in this whole process that the final season was going to be about a sexual assault, was that something you embraced? Did it have to be not a murder, because presumably viewers just wouldn't accept another murder in a place like that?
I think the brilliant thing that Chris has done over the 3 series is that he's created a community that feels like it's real. So a second murder in the second series wouldn't have felt right, nor would it in the third. And I think I've always said that I felt those characters existed before we turned the cameras on them, and they will exist after we've left. You know, they'll carry on with their lives. And I think it was absolutely right. And I think you have an opportunity with a show like Broadchurch where you have a broad appeal, and you have such popular appeal in many ways, and a responsibility to deliver something that has a bit of purpose as well. And I think in the 3rd series you've really earned the right to do that. So I was fully supportive, but we couldn't have done it without the support of these guys.
In terms of that responsibility, was it a much more pressurised responsibility in terms of not getting it wrong from both the victim's point of view, and we know victims all respond to that type of crime very differently, there isn't a one size fits all, also from the police point of view in a post-Savile era, and from the ladies that we'll talk to in a minute in terms of them being the face of how they help victims through this process?
Yeah, it was massive actually, and before we fully committed to it, and before I fully committed to it, myself and Sam Hoyle, who's a script executive, and went to talk to lots of people. And our first conversations when we came to see all of you, actually, part of those conversations were, well, part of it was, tell us how this process works, tell us what happens when a crime is reported, but also, should we be telling this story, and are we allowed to tell this story, and is Broadchurch a good forum in which to tell this story? And so we talked to a lot of people, and including survivors, and that was the sort of big question we asked, and everyone said yes. And actually I was very hesitant in coming in and very hesitant in asking that question, but you were all quite definite about it, actually, which made a massive difference. Yeah.
Tracy, given you've been involved and have helped Chris and Jane, especially in terms of the reality of what it's like to work at a rape crisis centre, now you've seen the first episode, how do you, I'm going to put you on the spot, I'm sorry, but how do you think the guys have done in achieving what you would say was an authentic portrayal of what a victim can go through?
I think we've all, both myself and Gloria and the Dorset Rape Crisis, we were really impressed and obviously slightly anxious about how it was going to come across. We had lots of dealings with Chris and Sam, spent many times talking to them. They came and visited us, we spoke to them on the phone, more poor Sam than anyone else. And then we also organised some of our ex-clients to come and chat with them. So we were a bit apprehensive, but we were really happily surprised by it, just because Julie, that herself, the victim, is very, I don't want to say stereotypical of what a victim comes across, but you know, we could really relate to how Julie was, because that's how clients that we meet. But also how Beth is as well. We haven't watched all of Beth's scenes yet. We've watched the first series we've just seen, and it was good. It's good so far. We're really excited to see the rest of it.
Beth, of course, played by Jodie Whittaker. You met Jodie, Gloria. What was she like to work with in terms of, presumably she was, I've met her, she's a great actress. She was very keen to find out from you guys what it is to do the role that she portrays in this season.
She asked lots of questions. She was very keen to get it right, to not be too oversensitive, but professional. She wanted to portray us as the professionals we are. She asked lots of questions, didn't she? Yeah.
Chris, was that a natural transition for Beth's character, and did it help having that 3-year gap, so you weren't trying to convince the viewer that straight away she's gone through the murder, she's going through the grieving, she's gone through then this terrible court case which doesn't get resolved in the way you would want it to if you were the mother of a murder victim, and then all of a sudden she's just switched on to something else? Does the time scale really help?
Yeah, and was built in to be that, to be honest. And there's a scene at the end of there's actually a sort of very small storyline in series 2 where she talks about founding a charity and that she's trying to find purpose in Danny's name, and actually that was the point in having everything 3 years later, and in a sense to mark the screen time between the first series and where we are now, was to keep exploring the emotional aftermath. In a sense, that's what Broadchurch has always been about. It's been about the emotional aftermath of crime, and to keep seeing that through with these characters and this family who've been through this trauma, as you say, have been through another trauma of a court case and haven't got the result they wanted, and to really show how do people keep living their lives, and that's a massive part of what Broadchurch is concerned with and obsessed with, is how do all these people keep rebuilding themselves and carrying on afterwards. So Beth is one of the central characters in that journey. Yeah,
because I work in news, and you cover the news story and then you think, how do these people, when they've done the press conference, when they've done the court case, how do they get out of bed the next day to deal with their lives? And that's clearly what this covers. In terms of when you look back on the whole Broadchurch experience, both of you, how key to its success is getting the Coleman-Tennant combination, Hardy-Miller, to this partnership that we have come come to really respect, to be intrigued with, that it's going to be taken off our screens later this year, never to return until you do a comeback show in 10 years' time, hopefully.
Provence, that one.
But how key is that to the show's success, you know,
Yeah.
on top of the storylines?
Yeah, no, everything. I mean, I think the strength of what David and Olivia bring to those parts, their chemistry with each other as performers, and also I think what you see in that first episode and you see across this series is the deepening of those characters, of the dynamics. They're not the same people you meet in series 1, episode 1, and come the end of this series, they're not the same people again. So, yeah, I mean, really, honestly, I had one great piece of writing advice early in my career, which was just write good parts for actors, and then leave them alone.
But the chemistry bit is love.
Yeah,
you know,
that's
because
very
you guys
true.
had never met before,
No,
had you?
no.
And we didn't really know that would work. So that is pure luck, really, and that there is a connection that, you know, you guys feel it, but every time we watch the rushes, those scenes in that first episode, the arguments in the car, always my favourite scenes, always the arguments between you, because there's such deep affection underneath them. It's like your family. You can argue with your family, you still love them, you come back the next day and it's sort of fine again. And there's this deepening friendship. I think it's remarkable.
And
We got
with
very
David,
lucky.
it's often no words, no script, it's just the eye roll,
incredible.
just the look, the...
David's
oh,
subtle
goodness.
acting is beyond, really, it's extraordinary. It
Was
really is.
there a conscious decision in this kind of era of celebrity to bring in familiar faces to us all in this season? You know, we've obviously got Julie, I'll talk to her in a minute, which is, you know, fantastic to have an ITV face joining such a much-loved ITV drama, but also Lenny Henry, Sarah Parish, again, somebody who's got an incredible CV, and Charlie Higson as well. Was that a conscious decision that you wanted to cast people that people recognised?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I
We
think
like
I think particularly knowing that it's a challenging storyline, I think that you're mainly, I mean, you're looking for great actors, and I think we are, I think then also actors that people know and love already is always great to see in a show. I think it was the challenge of the ensemble we set up in series 1, to be honest, when you have people like Vicky McClure and Will Mellor and Pauline Quirk, and then Charlotte Rampling and Marianne Jean-Baptiste. We knew people coming in this year, we wanted to have the mix of people you love, some new faces, and also people you might be surprised by, with people like Lenny and Charlie, and it's always a funny process casting, isn't it? It's always exciting. The alchemy of the mix of the parts is
And when that works, as it clearly did in season 1, where we saw those names that you just said, it just must be an amazing thing to be involved with, to see somebody really pushed out of their acting comfort zone, I suppose, or their performing
And
comfort zone.
there's a great thing. Chris delivers scripts, you know, fairly late-ish. You know what they're going to be, but they come through the process, which means so often we cast and then Chris is able to write. There is an advantage in that. Chris writes to the strengths that those actors bring in particular, and I think that's very often you really feel, my God, I've never seen that actor do that before, but that feels incredibly natural, and I think that's a real process, don't you, of being...
It's
on
the thing of it
journey
being
with them.
serialised, yeah.
it's serialised.
You might have 1 or 2 scripts at the start, but and the nature of compressing
That's the nature of it.
production, you then end up seeing the rushes and writing for people and challenging them. So that's the fun of it. I mean, I also remember the first time there's a scene in series 1 where Ellie asks Hardy for dinner, and it was the first sort of non-procedurally scene we had in the show, and I remember the rushes coming in for that day and just hooting with laughter and going, oh my God, oh, we've got something here. And it was one of those things where you thought, I don't know how we're going to edit that scene, because both cameras you wanted to have both on screen at the same time
Totally
between
right.
David and Olivia, and that was the point I thought
Yeah.
where we went, oh, okay, this might be all right.
Let's bring in the actors now, David and Julie, if I can start with you, David. What was your instinct when you first either heard the idea that it was going to go down this path of a serious sexual assault, or you read the first script for this season?
Well, Chris had told us that was the intention quite a long way back, but without a great deal of detail to that. And I suppose it made sense, as you've already discussed, that it couldn't be another body on another beach. That wouldn't have the kind of the truthfulness that I think you would come to expect from this series. So beyond that, you just kind of travel in trust, really. That Chris is going to produce something that is sensitive and appropriate, and also a stonky piece of drama, you know, and that's quite that's some quite difficult elements to balance, but that's what I think this series has become known for, and I think that's what one was hoping for and then found in the script. It's a different type of story. It's the same world, but it's the same show, but it's a different show at the same time, and that's what's interesting from Olivia and I's point of view, is suddenly we're two coppers doing a job. It's got a sort of, we're starting from the outside working into the case, whereas before in series 1 and 2 there's a much more immediate personal connection with the characters. It was really interesting to play these people as policemen, and to examine how they go about their actual job, and also how they go about their actual job 3 years down the line, because they are damaged individuals for different reasons, but damaged individuals who don't really have a lot of friends other than each other. So they've become this weird little sort of support group for each other, this kind of cranky old married couple who clearly have a deep affection and need for each other, although they would never express it that way. And it was just lovely to return to these characters and find them in a different part of their life, and then of course to get into this story, the particularities of this story, which had been so brilliantly researched already, and then to be able to speak to police officers who worked in that field, experts in that field, and to try and be pay tribute to those people who do that job as well as they do, without being kind of unrealistic about it.
Yeah, I was going to say on that point, there was I wanted it to happen, and I didn't think it was going to be, just because I'm very cynical, but there was a scene in the first episode where one of the policewomen, I think, says, you know, why should we trust the victim, which we all know has been historically how victims can be treated by some police officers. I know you worked with Dorset Police on this. Presumably that was really important to reflect that not every single police officer is on the same page yet, that there are still victims who will walk into police stations who won't be believed, and that, you know, this is still a learning process for people. That, victims
but also
have got
there's a
to believe from the
conflict
outset.
in the very nature of examining a case like this, because the sort of the interface of all your evidence is also someone who's been deeply traumatized. So you've got a responsibility to them as human beings, but then as police officers you've got a responsibility to get to the truth of the situation, and the clock's ticking, and that kind of that very problem at the centre of things is something that I think that, you know, that Hardy and Ellie both react to slightly differently, and I think that's all part of, you know, the police officers who dedicate their lives to this do so often with incredible dedication and compassion and objectivity, but it's full of complications, it's full of difficulty, and it's full of frustrations, and I think that's shown as they struggle with the case.
That also came out of the research as well, talking to our police advisors, that often the most sceptical are the younger women, the women in their 20s, in terms of on the police.
So it's not necessarily who you think it is.
No, absolutely, no, no. And I think that's, you know, hopefully what the series is concerned with is that breadth of attitudes. But also I think the important thing to say is that Hardy and Ellie investigating it are the best practice. They are the two people you can rely on more than anyone in this world to investigate this, and we wanted to show how that investigation goes when two people who are brilliant and humane and empathetic are in charge of it.
Julie, obviously you left a massive ITV show, a massive British television show. What was it like to get the call to say, we'd like you to join Broadchurch?
Well, it's pretty amazing. Yeah, it's a pretty amazing phone call to get, and to hear what the story was that was going to be explored as well was something that was really interesting to me, and a little bit scary for me as well, because obviously there's been a lot of discussion and around that time too, about the televising of sexual violence and the way that that is has become almost normalised in our culture now, and putting your face to that is something that, you know, I had to really think about, and it took a conversation with Chris to, you know, because I didn't know Chris, and I didn't know what his politics were around this issue, obviously, and I mean, I probably could have guessed, but I needed to know that that was going to be something that was going to be handled in a way. But even by the very fact that it's me that has been cast as the person who's experienced this, I think is a very interesting thing as an ordinary-looking middle-aged woman, rather than, you know, the classic young girl being chased through the woods. And I think that in itself is quite an interesting take on it that I hope will. And it was interesting for me. We were talking about this earlier about how I had to look at some of my own internalised misogyny, really, because I had fears that the audience wouldn't buy that this could happen to someone like me, and that she was a sexual person as well, and, you know, things that come out in later episodes is like, and that's very internalised, you know, kind of, because obviously this isn't an act of sex and desire, it's an act of violence, and it happens to all people, men, women and children, and all different kinds of people, and I think that very fact alone was really interesting.
It's a really complex concept, but I think that, I've only seen the first episode, but I think that comes out in your portrayal, really just in, not necessarily the scripting, but just in the way that you convey that kind of why me. In terms of as an actor, how was it a big deal to join such an established cast where you've got these two big names who, you know, arguably have made this series, you know, one of the reasons why it's been such a big hit? Is that daunting?
Were we very intimidating?
Yes. No. I love it, but I was very intimidated. After my first day, I said to David and Olivia that I had to apologise and say that I would try and be less of a competition winner the next day. So I did feel like that. I was a bit like I've been let in. It's just like, so come on, you can be in this. Thanks.
Did they show you where the loos were and things like that? Did they make you a cup of coffee?
Well, if you know David and Olivia, they show you more than where the loos are. They sometimes in the end one.
You know you're in a room full of journalists.
She didn't have to give us her lunch money for the first week.
No, it was amazing, and you know, we did a photo shoot, you know, the classic sort of like, you know, on the pier photo shoot with everybody, and it was a bit like being in Madame Tussauds, you know, it's like hell, it's like you get away Lenny there and everything, you know, but it was amazing. It's real, you know, and the word privilege is thrown around, you know, but it really did feel like that for me, yeah.
And in terms of the actual nitty gritty of getting this role right, you know, you've got a script which you know, presumably from the first episode, it does get it right. But then for your portrayal to be authentic as well, you know, you're sitting alongside Michelle, and she was you spoke to her before you started filming, but also she was on set for the initial scenes that we've seen now. How crucial was that to have somebody who is at the heart of it, who's spoken to many a victim, who knows the reality of what it's like for a victim to go into a police station, and how that happens and how that happens, you know, realistically?
Well, it was absolutely amazing. I mean, I met Michelle, Tracy and Gloria before we did filming, and what was interesting is that, of course, there's no template for playing someone who's experienced this. You know, everybody reacts to it differently, so it's in part the writing by Chris, and in part an act of your own imagination of how it must feel and how you imagine it would be to go through something like that, unimaginable though it is. So to have the three of them, and Jenny as well. Where's Jenny? She's our police advisor. Especially in those first scenes, because those were the first scenes we filmed, so that I filmed as well, were the ones actually in the side. It was incredibly reassuring and comforting for me to have them there, but also Michelle's presence on set created a sort of atmosphere of, because, you know, a television set can be quite sort of it can be very male, and it can be very sort of work a day and very sort of bum 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 bum, you know, you work into a schedule, and Michelle being there created an atmosphere of great care and warmth and attention that was really, really helpful to me. And also having David and Olivia there, who were just lovely and so generous, and I mean that, I'm not you know, because you hear terrible stories about
Both of
actors, you know, not being about but you do, you know, and they were just like completely there for me and so generous in the way that they were acting those things with me. And Andy as well, who played the side officer, was lovely, wasn't she? So it all really helped.
Michelle, how was it for you? Because in the day job, obviously, that is what you do, and you're dealing with people who go through these horrific experiences. But how important was it to be involved with this so that a much wider audience, you know, the Broadchurch loyal fan base, rather than somebody who might see something about this on the news or tune into it in another type of crime drama, that they got a true representation of what some people go through?
It's really important to get that message out. There's so many good support, so much good support out there from the SARC Red Crisis all over the country. It's really important. That attention to detail, to me, was vital, and that's what we got. Because I know even on set, everybody was asking me, how would I do this? How would that be? You know, what's the reality of this? And it just made so much sense that this is real life. And I just said to Chris as I came in, it was like watching that was like being at work, because that was the reality of what happens, which I think is amazing.
I mean, that's just fantastic. I mean, that must be, for you to hear that, because effectively that is what you presumably set out to achieve for those parts of the drama that were so important to play absolutely how it is. And if that's what Michelle's saying to you, that must be incredible to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. It means a lot. I think it's as much we want to get it right for them. It's you know, because actually we've spent a lot of time with them and some of your colleagues as well and other people, and I think they are some of the most remarkable people I've ever met in my life, and what they do is extraordinary. And so yeah, the purpose of this series is to get it right and for people to understand that the support services and the people who work in them are an incredible resource and a bunch of extraordinary people. So.
My favourite bit, just before I open it out to the audience, was the bit where Olivia Colman says to you, we'll do the swab now because, you know, I'm going to do that first so you can have a cup of tea. And it's that attention to detail that her character would absolutely have so much empathy that that's the way she would treat you, and she would explain why she was doing it, and of course she would give you that cup of tea. So I just thought it was a brilliant, tiny, well-observed moment.
Definitely, and it's worth saying with that one, you know, we built the SARC, so that set that you saw where those rooms are happening, that looked like a location, but that was an exact replica of the original SARC, the Shawls. And even though I don't think the audience would necessarily know that that's what a SARC should look like, and in fact you can't really even tell the way it's been cut, but that was really important, that the rooms are interlinking and that you have the specific, you know, the yellow things on the door. So that level of detail, we built that set entirely just for that sequence, and that was why it was really important to get that right as well. So I think the whole team made a real effort to try and achieve what these guys do on a daily basis.
Super. Okay, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, over to you. As ever with these events, if you could put your hand up so we can get a mic to you, and if you could say your name and the publication that you're from, if that's okay, please. Who would like to go first? Gentleman there on the about fifth row. Have we got microphones? Whether we
haven't actually
either, so shout loudly, please, if that's okay.
Hi, Ben Travis from the Evening Standard. I think it's really important to get, if this is going to be the final series of Broadchurch, to get the end of the story right. I'm sure we've all had TV shows that we love where we didn't quite like the ending. Do you think audiences are going to be happy and satisfied with the ending that you've come up with for the end of Broadchurch?
I think the worst answer I could give you, Ben, now would be no. Literally the worst pitch ever. I hope, certainly, I think everybody who has read it and been in it, and people who've seen it, and including our ITV paymasters who are in the room, I feel like there's a sense of a story closing and ending and going back to its beginning. I hope it's satisfying, you know.
I felt enormous fucking relief when I saw it, I have to say. When I read it, I got the first draft, I was like, oh, thank fuck it worked. So you may disagree with me when you watch it, but from our point of view making it,
yeah.
I felt enormous relief and satisfaction and sort of hope that it was doing the right sort of ending for this show.
And I think we have told the story we want to tell in its entirety.
Yeah.
David, are you the same? Because you're not going to say anything different, but it must be so hard when you've thrown so much into a character for so many years that if you don't think your character personally gets resolved in the way that you would imagine it to be, and if it did conflict with Chris's vision, but presumably you were happy with how
I think, well, you don't want to give anything away, but I think it strikes the perfect note and takes, certainly in terms of my character and Olivia's character, it leaves them exactly where you would expect them to be left. I think there's a great satisfaction, there's a myriad of feelings about it, but I think that's where it should be.
Chris, is the pressure harder nowadays, where an entire, multi-season production can hang on the ending going wrong? And we've all been there. Where
you just said that.
But it hasn't changed in terms of in past, I don't know, 5-10 years, where there's all these analytical articles about why this didn't work because the whole entire season finale was wrong. Or do you not? You can't think about things like that.
No. I mean, I think there's more commentary on television now, but that's because I think television's in an amazing place. Television's taken over from film as the prevailing, interesting piece of screen culture. So it's an extraordinary time to be working in television and to be making these sort of long, novelistic, multi-episode, multi-season shows. So you just stay away from all the other stuff. Like Julie says, the word privilege it is a privilege to be able to tell a story over. It's going to be 4 to 5 years on air and 24 hours with a bunch of characters. That just feels thrilling, and I'm very grateful for that chance, to be honest. And I hope the audience feel the same way.
Question, gentlemen.
I was just wondering, you talked
Sorry,
about,
can you just give me
it's
a name?
Bendal, Radio Time. I was talking, in terms of the sort of preoccupations in the country or events that have happened, I was wondering if you could flesh that out a bit and talk about why this particular story is right for right now, and what you meant by that. You alluded to it earlier.
Yeah, I think that just on crime statistics alone, the increase in reporting on sexual assaults, and actually, Michelle, you were saying actually you'd seen a 40% rise in...
Yeah, on non-police reported sexual violence.
On non-police report, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
which can often then go on to be police reported, but it's people making that first contact with the services saying, I don't quite know what to do, what are my choices, what are my options, and then we can guide them through the processes that are right for them. So,
And that was a 40% increase year on year?
on last year, that's in the last quarter. Yeah.
So I think that's what the increase in statistics. I think the change in the emphasis culturally, and I think obviously the dissonance between the amount of crimes being reported and the amount of crimes going to court and then getting a guilty verdict. So all those things are in the mix, and the general prevailing mood of the nation around these issues seems to be different to what it was 5 or 10 years ago, I think.
Do you include some historic sexual abuse in that as well?
No.
Neela from the Express Line. Julie, I was just going to ask you, how hard was it playing a kind of sexual assault victim? Did you get any kind of counselling on set, and kind of what was it like kind of having to go to these kind of dark places?
Well, I'm always really aware when you're playing a role like this, that I am an actor doing it, and I'm not going through it for real, and you've got to be careful not to be a twat about things like that. Do you know what I mean? Because you can be.
Put that in the Express.
You can't believe it along going, oh, it's been so hard for me acting this part, and having to put myself through that thing. When people are actually going through it, I had an experience a few years ago playing Sylvia Lancaster, who lost her daughter to a brutal hate crime, And I was coming off stage every night, and people were saying, how was it for you? God, how did you manage to do that 45 minutes? And the real Sylvia was in the foyer selling wristbands for a charity, you know, and it's like, and again, it's like, how much of a wanker would you be to be like, it's been really, really hard. I don't know how I've managed it. You know, so always with that in mind, it's like, I suppose the hardest thing is the responsibility you feel, because you do want to get it right, and because you're representing a group of people who are actually going through something for real, and you want it to be, you want to show that in the best and truest way you can. But to say that it's hard or traumatic for me in any way would be a bit.
Nina, there's two questions, no, three now. Morgan, and then Oliver and Andy.
Okay.
On that row.
Morgan.
Yeah, Morgan Jeffrey from Digital Spy. Question for Chris. How did you decide with this series which elements from the first two series to bring back, which characters to bring back?
There was never any question about bringing back the Latimers. I mean, I feel like the story of Broadchurch is, in some ways, a story of two families and an interloper, you know, in some ways.
That's you.
Yeah.
I got that.
I mean, a good interloper. So the Latimers were always going to be there, and the church has always felt very important, and we're very lucky. Arthur Darvill, who is now a superhero in America, we managed to get him in between. If anybody's watching Legends of Tomorrow, the reason he's only in half a season is because he's in half a season of Broadchurch. So we managed to get him as well. He really wanted to come back and finish the journey with us, made a special effort. It felt relatively clear to me in terms of the emotional journeys that the characters started in Series 1, which then weave in and out of this story in Series 3. So it's really just following those journeys that we've been following for 2 seasons through to their emotional conclusions, really.
Andy.
Hi, I'm Oliver from the Sun TV magazine. Obviously Broadchurch is known for its secrecy in the production. What lengths did you have to go to keep the reveal of Trisha's attacker under wraps?
If we tell you,
We'd have to kill you.
yeah, all of them. We a lot. I mean, we write very little down. Every outline,
Code names.
we have code names. The names on the script aren't even Broadchurch. In fact, the name of the writer on the front of the script is not even.
She's an excellent writer, though.
Yeah. So how we devised, you'll like this one. So on season 2 and season, I'm allowed to say this now, aren't I?
Say it now,
On
it's
season
funny.
2 and season 3, the script title pages have. My name isn't on them. I did write them, can I just say. They are the Downton name of who?
It's your Downton name and my Downton.
Oh yeah, myself and Sam.
I didn't know this.
How do we get the Downton name again? I've forgotten now.
It's your,
Oh,
it's your,
yeah, that thing.
your grandparents' first name, and then
First
and then your middle school. So mine was Margaret Cedars.
Margaret Cedars is written this year, and Series 2 was written by Phyllis Whitney. She's my grandma, and
it was called Tea and Sympathy.
yeah. So for a start, so the reason behind that is people leave scripts lying around, nobody picks that script up to read, whereas if they go Broadchurch Series 2 or Series 3, you pick it up. So we start by lying on our cover page, and we sort of go on from there.
We watermark everything.
We watermark, everything is password protected. Everybody has individual
So many passwords to forget.
Everybody forgets them. Everybody's the poor.
Midnight texting. I've got to read the script for tomorrow.
Yeah.
What's the
Even I
password?
forget. I go to open the script and I'm like, what's the password? There's a lot we do, and we don't issue parts of certain scripts, and we film alternate versions, and we do all the things you would expect we do. We sort of do all of them.
Did you film alternate versions of the ending then?
I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm not going to tell. If I tell you all the secrets, I mean, you know, as we have done all the time, we go to a lot of lengths to hopefully give the audience a story that has surprises in it, and you know, you guys have always been brilliant at supporting us in that and not spoiling things, and we're incredibly appreciative of that. And we've got more of those this year, I hope, and that's the aim, is to get the show to the audience to the ending, so that everybody experiences together, because I think the hardest thing in this day and age is the communal viewing experience. So I think from my point of view, from our point of view, if the only message you take away from here today is like people to turn up to ITV on the night when it goes out, because it's a live viewing experience, this series, and there are some great,
and there's a
twists
big
and
whodunit. The whodunit element becomes a massive.
Yeah, and that's so we don't just do it for the sake of security. We do it so that hopefully we can get it to screen in the most enjoyable fashion, really.
If we leave things on trains, that's what we're afraid of.
Yeah.
Julie, when did you know? Did you know from the outset of the script?
Oh, good joking, no.
She still doesn't know.
And still not. It's to watch episode 8. No, none of us knew. None of us knew. And I think it's a really good indication of the sort of, the whodunit elements. If it's, it feels a bit crass to say that, but it isn't. It's a thriller. And it is that we were all every morning in makeup, thinking up outlandish theories and trying to guess, weren't we? Every one of us.
I hope you've done sealed envelopes so that when it's finally revealed, you can work out who was right and who was wrong. Time for a final question. Thank you.
Yeah, David, you about Sandy Horse and the Sun. David, you mentioned a deep affection between you and Olivia's character. Do you think you'll ever go further than just two detectives? Or?
No. Have you seen the series?
Not lingering looks.
It's contempt.
Disdain.
Yes, no, they're not. That's not their bag, I don't think.
Well, that's a spoiler of sorts, and I'm kind of walking away broken-hearted now. There was always a chance, maybe.
No, there wasn't.
They had to share a premiere in bed in series 2.
Yeah.
That was,
So we've got one more.
Okay.
Nicola from the Mirror.
Hello, hi. Chris, you devised this as a 3-series run, but I know it hasn't. We haven't watched it yet. But could it come back in the future, or as a film, or will we ever get any more Broadchurch?
I've got another job.
Oh, yeah. However many years you do Doctor Who, could you do it after?
If I tell you that, I don't want to give anything away about the ending.
Oh.
On that
I think that's an appropriate place to stop, ladies and gentlemen. Gloria, Tracy, Michelle, Julie, David, Chris and Jane, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Pick the phone.
Now let's see what it says. Play that.
Which one's yours?
How are you?
Now it's kind of like dashing to file.
Yeah, you do.
I'm gonna go home and file. Show me when I'm back to the office. I put that on there.
Yeah, I'll see what isn't used, but I imagine everything is going to be absolutely.
I don't know, I need to have a think what to do and take the best line. But I think definitely Julie's saying stuff that she had to think about it before she took on the role.